E ngā hapu e ngā iwi o te Whakatohea. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. This is part 2 of my presentation about the Whakatohea efforts to settle our historic treaty claims. My name is Tuariki Delamere, and I'm going to go through the settlement issues and where our starting point should have been, at least in my opinion. So, what should have Whakatohea's opening position have been? Well, my thoughts on that is that when you're negotiating treaty settlement claims, it's like a football field. One end you've got the Crown, at the other end you've got iwi, the claimants, the ones who have been wronged. Now, I believe the Whakatohea negotiators that were appointed, I guess, by themselves, given the finding of the Waitangi Tribunal in Claim Y2662, they should have gone and come to the people of Whakatohea, to the hapu, to the iwi, and together work out what the Whakatohea opening settlement position should have been, our position that we table with the Crown. And we put our stake in the ground. There it goes. We're at one end of the field. And of course, the Crown will come back with their position, their agreement in principle. That's fine. They're entitled to their position. We're entitled to our opening position. But see, that's not what happened. By the time the Pre-Settlement Claims Trust people came back to us, the hapu, the iwi, they gave us an opening position that was the Crown's position. That's where we started. Now, that, in terms of negotiations, is absolutely crazy. So where were our negotiators coming off back to us, and that's our open position? They bring to us the Crown's position. Now, let's look what they've tentatively agreed to, want us to agree to. The triangle there basically from Ohiwa Harbour out to Whakaari, back to just before Torere. That's the moana that our negotiators have agreed with. They haven't even gone out 90 degrees perpendicular from the coastline, the other red line. And that's because they've said, oh, but ngati awa, te whānapanui and Naitarangi, and Naitai have claims on those areas as well. Yes, they do. But what do our negotiators think they're doing and just rolling over, playing dead and handing that other area over to those iwi? Even though most of us whakapapa back to them anyway. That's not the point. At the very least, they should have claimed that. However, I believe our mana moana should extend out to the 200-mile limit, which I think is the limit that the Crown claims control and ownership of. So that's where we should have gone, our opening position. And our negotiators say, hey, we've done really well. We've got the Crown to give us, or reserve for us, 5,000 hectares for aquaculture development. Why 5,000? Why not the whole lot? That's mana moana. We own it. They stole it. That's where we start. We don't start with 5,000 bloody hectares. And they said, we're going to use $2 million as part of our quantum of 100 million. And that's going to be used for the Tuariki port. Well, hold on. Why do we have to use our settlement funds for that? St. John's has got a $3 billion fund for regional development. Why can't it come out of that? I mean, Tuariki is not just Māori, it's Pākehā as well. So why are we footing the bill? If we want to put in $2 million, that should be our decision. We shouldn't be agreeing to spend money based on what the Crown tells us. Now, let's look at the funds. I went to a meeting and I was told by Maui how great their settlement, 100 million. You know, that's more than the 42 million that myself, to Whakatohea Williams and Claude Karodia Edwards negotiated. And that's true. Except, see, we did ours in 1996. Stick $42 million in the bank back then on revolving term deposit with the banks, that probably would have gone $200 to $300 million by now. So I don't have a problem with 100 million, but don't have the negotiators try and tell me how fantastic their $100 million offer is from the Crown. It's not. It's effectively, in terms of today's inflation, not as good as what we got 24 years ago. So what should the Whakatohea starting point have been? Well, these are my thoughts. No one else's. But I look at it and see the lifeblood of Whakatohea is its people, all of us, all of its people. And in the census of 2013, 12,177 people registered themselves as Whakatohea. We don't have the figure for 2018 because the Crown managed to stuff that up royally. So we don't know what it's increased to. But all of us know that at least 20,000 people whakapapa back to Whakatohea. But we know at least 12,000 have registered with the census, with the Crown. So that leads me to my settlement demand number one. I want the Crown to provide to Whakatohea the details of everyone who registered in the census as Whakatohea. What's wrong with that? That's our taonga, those are our people. They've expressed and confirmed to the Crown they are Whakatohea. We are morally entitled to that information. And that leads me to settlement number two. We should be telling the Crown, we now, because we have 12,000 plus people on our register, we want you to fund and assist us in creating a fully interactive database register of all iwi members. And by the way, Mr. Crown, or Mrs. Crown, given Queen Elizabeth at the top, we think you should do that for all iwi, across the board, across the country. 775,000 people have identified themselves as Māori. If you have them on a fully interactive database by their iwi, by the time you finish that, we have created the Māori nation, a massively influence on the nation's politics if we do this. 1 and 2, settlement demands. And settlement demand number 3, we're in the midst of the most terrible COVID-19 crisis. We've learned about how important the internet is, the Wi-Fi is. And we want the Crown to fund, I want the Crown to fund and take the necessary steps to establish Wi-Fi connectivity to every marae and school within Now, Crimes Act 1961, Section 2461, talks about receiving. Everyone who's guilty of receiving, who receives any property stolen or obtained by any other imprisonable offence. The loss of our land, our moana, was pure and simple theft. The Crown is guilty of receiving. And when your stolen property these days is found, it's returned to the rightful owner, unless, of course, that's land stolen by the government from Māori. So, settlement demand number 4 should have been, by our negotiators, to the Crown, you are to return to Whakatohea the ownership of all land currently owned by the Crown within the Whakatohea rohe, including the conservation estate. Stolen land is stolen land. Receiving stolen property is receiving stolen property. And that land was stolen. The Crown even admits as much. But they say, oh no, we've fallen in love with it. We're now calling most of it the conservation estate. I don't care. Just return it. Then we can sit down and work out how to manage that conservation estate, but with us as the owners, as it rightfully should be. Settlement demand number 5. The Crown should vest, we want the Crown to vest in Whakatohea, the ownership of all commercial, mineral and fishing rights of Whakatohea's mana moana. From Wahiwa Harbour out 200 miles. From just before Tuariki out 200 miles. Back in 2002, 2003, the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, they said, yeah, Māori have ownership rights, mana moana, until Helen took them away. Still theft, and that's our starting point. That's what we want. And finally, let's look at quantum settlement dollars. In 1997, 8, cabinet, I was a member of the cabinet back then, and the government, I'm part of it, we gave $267 million to Equity Corp shareholders. Now, those shareholders, no one forced them to buy the shares in Equity Corp. No one forced them to believe in Alan Hawkins. Yeah, the guy was corrupt, a thief, whatever. Yet, we, the Crown, you, the taxpayer, we paid over $267 million to basically Pākehā shareholders. And then a few years ago, I'm not sure where it was, 2012 or thereabouts, South Canterbury finance shareholders, the Crown bailed them out $1.6 billion, $1,600 million. Again, no one forced those shareholders to buy those shares, put their money there. But they got bailed out by the Crown. And get the pie. But that leads me now to the orchestra, the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra. In this century alone, the last 19, 20 years, they've received about $200 million. And again, that's fine. But that leads me to my settlement demand number 6. I believe we are worth at least what the symphony orchestra is worth. So I want the Crown to pay us $200 million, which is about what they paid to the orchestra. Will the Crown agree to our demands? Probably not. But it's about putting our stake in the ground at our end of the field and justifying our claims. And when the Crown goes back and brings us that agreement in principle, which offers us sweet or nothing in comparison, then we go back, okay, Mr. Crown, those are our offers. Tell us in writing why you don't agree to our demands. What is wrong with our demands? What's immoral about our demands? What is not justified in our demands? But no, our negotiators went and stood at the other end of the field with the Crown and brought us their offer. Didn't tell us about what their offer, our offer was, because they didn't have one. They just, whatever, did what the Crown said. And for that, they went and hired someone from Ngāpuhi to by all intents, to be our lead negotiator. Yeah, well, paid a lot of money for nothing. And who should be negotiating for Whakatohea? Whakatohea should be negotiating for Whakatohea. We got an army of highly qualified, skilled, experienced people that can be utilized. Why the hell have we gone up to Ngāpuhi, who can't settle their own problems, and hired one of them to run our claim, for God's sake? You've got Untitled Delamere Mill. She spent several years managing down at the Waitangi Tribunal. Andrea Tunks, doing treaty claims as a lawyer, Tu Williams, and many others. We sure as heck don't need to be wasting our money on someone who's not Whakatohea when we have the skills from within. And so, that's the conclusion of part 2 of my presentation of Whakatohea treaty claims. Like I said in the other mandate video I did, I'm not necessarily opposed to the people on the Whakatohea Pre-Settlement Claims Trust. They don't have a mandate as far as I'm concerned, and as far as Waitangi Tribunal is concerned. We need to sort that out, because right now, the only people who are winning are the lawyers. That needs to stop. And we need to tell the Crown, hey, we're going back to get our mandate, and then our mandated negotiators will put their demands on the table for you to respond to. E te whānau, e te ngā hapu, e te iwi, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.